It's an amazing film, and thank you for producing it, for hosting it, for doing the interviews. Thank you for your advising, and thank you for being a part of it. I guess I want to ask you first, Steve, when you watch it and you watched it with this audience, what do you see in it? And are there things that you feel were right on that you are glad you got, and anything that you didn't?
I mean, this is, I guess, moments like this is why I started the project. I'm glad that Josh decided to join me in the project. I just wanted a reset. I wanted people to feel what I know all of you felt as you were watching it. If you're like me, the school shootings started to blend together, and there was a numbness. And the whole point of this is just to restore some empathy. So when I look out and I watch you watch the film, you know, I feel like it's working. Somebody who watched the film commented to me, you know, you show me the picture of a beautiful child, you know, was killed in a school shooting, and it's somebody else's child. You show me the bedroom, and all of a sudden it's my child. So I think that's what we're going for. We don't want to bring people down, but at the same point, I want to make people feel again, because we need to end this.
How many letters to parents did you send out asking for a visit to their home?
We tried to reach out to everybody who lost a child in a school shooting since
Which is how many?
Sandy Hook, probably about 100. Yeah.
And how many responded?
I probably got responses from about 20 or so. In the end, 8 said yes. There were some that felt like they wanted to answer but weren't quite ready to open up the bedroom to somebody outside, because for most of the families, the bedroom was just a place for really close friends and family. So to let in a news crew was a huge ask, and I knew it was a big ask. But for those who did, I'm very grateful, because they made the film possible.
And so the four of the 8 you're including here. I wonder, again, thank you for being here, Nancy. And I realize it's almost the 5th anniversary of the Saugus school shooting that was in California, November 14th, 2020. It seems so recent. And I wonder, first for you, if you can tell us what it was like when you got Steve's letter, you and your husband.
We actually heard about it from the Muehlbergers. Their daughter's featured on here as well. They said, oh, you have to open the letter from Steve Hartman. You'll be getting a letter. Okay. So we read it, and we really thought it was an amazing idea to feature the kids' bedrooms, to be able to get a different perspective. Like you said, instead of just a picture, you're going into their private safe space and seeing how they lived, what their interests and hobbies were at the time. And so we were excited about the project. We know Dominic would have loved it. We definitely had no issues with them coming into his room, because he would have been all about it.
You can kind of get that right from the very beginning. What is it about him that you wanted to make sure they captured? What did you want them to see?
Just his fun, bubbly spirit. Dominic was very loud, very bright. That was shown in his room with all the colors. Friends and family were number one to him. He has pictures of his friends from one of the dances they had just went to recently, maybe a month or so before. His family was number one. He always asked me to have more kids so he could have more brothers. He loved taking care of them. I said, no, you have your own. So you can have your own to take care of. But family was number one for him, especially the last few years. We would ask if he wanted to go hang out with friends or sleep over. And he's like, no, I just want to hang out with you guys. So that was his number one thing.
And I got the sense that he liked SpongeBob.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I realized after the fact that I think he had such a love for SpongeBob because It was kind of comparable to his personality, annoying laughter, loud, kind. It was this character is very similar to Dominic and who he was as a person, fun-loving, a jokester. Yeah, I think that's why he related and why he must have loved SpongeBob so much.
Were you going to say something, Josh?
Well, I just remember you told us that when he asked for presents, he would ask for picture frames so that he could frame his pictures of his family in his room. What kid asked for picture frames?
Yeah, we had actually, he kept asking me to take him to IKEA so we can get picture frames. And some of those frames that the pictures are in are from that trip because he wanted to display his friends and his family in his room.
I also have to say that I loved the dirty laundry. Yeah, that's kind of amazing. Do you still keep it there?
It's still there.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't have a need to go through it, so we just don't.
Yeah. So, Josh, I want to ask you about, there were a couple of mentions of smells, of odor, and I realized what a primitive sense that is. And a couple of the parents brought it up, and also light. First, when you entered Dominic's home, and I think for maybe Jackie Cervantes' home later on, the lights in her room. And when you enter rooms, bedrooms, there's a lot that's so similar when you go into a kid's bedroom. As you were saying, Steve, you're trying to capture an individual child who's no longer living. How do you find the personality in the child unique in one bedroom from another without just going into another room, which, basically that's what you're doing, is going into another room. How do you do it differently?
Well, I think, working with Lou Bopp,
The photographer.
Yeah, Lou Bopp is the photographer in the film. Steve reached out to Lou before he reached out to me, and they were doing this project for a few years. And then Steve came to me and said, I'm doing this project. I haven't told my bosses about it. It's kind of secret. We're taking pictures and trying to capture these children through their bedrooms. And he said, do you think there might be a film? And I just immediately, at the time my daughters were 2 and 6, and I was thinking, in a couple of years, they're going to be doing active shooter drills. And I thought, this is such a smart way to reframe the issue away from politics and toward being a human being. And so I immediately said, I think, yes, there's a film here. And Steve said, well, if there's a film, I don't want to be in it. And I said, no, you have to be in it. Because I think Steve Hartman is, if there's a perfect messenger in this world for this issue, I think it's Steve Hartman. He's not known as a political reporter. He's just known to tell stories about humanity, and people trust him. He has followings all over the country of people of all different political stripes. And so I was very interested in having him be the person who takes you on this journey.
So I'm wondering, though, still with the tools, the craft of the camera, the production, the editing, how again did you approach making one room different from another, what you're looking at? Lou had his own pictures, the things that he focused on. How did you decide what to focus on?
So I interviewed all of the parents. I interviewed Nancy and everyone, and we took the photos that Lou took, and we also captured moments in the rooms, for example, the reading of the letter, or the, Nancy showing us Dominic's laundry, all those little details. And we looked for the things that captured who the child was, but also captured the absence, that captured the sense of loss, that captured the heartbreak. Because I think, as Steve said, these rooms are very relatable. I think we can all find similar, familiarity in these rooms. We all were kids once. We all had rooms, and some of us have kids. So there's something very powerful about these spaces.
And a lot of the rooms had things that my kids have in their rooms. I mean, those shell collections or that bank, that it's so easy to pick. Just a lot of the same things. And I think that maybe that's why, the rooms almost bring it home more than the faces that we've seen so many times, because we see our own children in the rooms.
By the way, we have an audience question. What was the most common response when asked what families hoped for in their participation in the film? What did they want?
I think Nancy touched on it. I mean, I think most families, they want us to know their child. They don't want us to move on and grow numb and forget their child. So this is a chance to get to know their child through the room. The other thing is that there needs to be some purpose. They've gone through this loss. I can't imagine the pain of just having that loss happen and nothing good comes from it. So for those who did agree to be part of this project, I think that was part of it. Am I close there? Yeah, okay.
I agree. Yeah. I know, especially with my husband, he wants everyone to know who Dominic was and is, and his big personality, and he never wants him to be forgotten. Obviously, I don't either. We just handle it a little differently, but we definitely want his legacy to live on. What a kind person he was. The different stories we heard from friends and classmates after the fact that we didn't know. He would walk his friends to the bathroom and kind of be an escort for them, or if someone was new or looking down or depressed, he would ask them how they were doing. He was that person, and we didn't know some of those things that were happening at school, and it was really good to hear from his friends. So just hearing those stories and letting them live on with this documentary is really positive for us, really helps us a lot.
Chethan, I wonder if you can tell us about your involvement in this, and it is at the front lines. You're seeing it close up. And when we hear about how many school shootings are there every year?
Almost 180, depending on the way that you define it.
So it's inconceivable,
Yep.
given the number and how many we think of and how many we remember, that there are some going on every other day in the country. How do you see it up close?
Yeah, just first of all, Nancy, as everyone said, a huge, huge thank you, for sharing this story with everyone here. I mean, the tremendous courage that must take, I can't even begin to imagine, so thank you. And to Josh and Steve for really kind of exposing this incredible story. I can tell you, having treated hundreds of kids with bullet wounds, whenever you're in the operating room with a child, or an adult for that matter, when you're pulling a bullet out of that body, the room always goes silent. Everybody can feel that life slipping away. And I think one thing that I've learned through the years of doing this work is that after that child either passes away or is disabled for life, when you go and speak to the families after, it doesn't matter which end of the political spectrum they're on, they all want the exact same thing, right? And I found that through thousands of conversations on this topic throughout this country, and I say this in an optimistic tone, in the sense that I have yet to find one American family that doesn't want their kids to be alive, safe, less violence, and no mass shootings. It's just the solutions to get there are different, depending on who you talk to. And so, I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but that is something, despite what we see on the front lines, what I think that we have exposed over time. And this film really shines a very unique light on this epidemic. I can tell you that we, unfortunately, just like most people in the public, are tremendously desensitized to this, right? When you have to treat kid or adult with a bullet wound, you need to move on, right? You need to be able to be available to treat the next. But to have this viewpoint of looking at an empty room is incredibly, incredibly impactful.
So how did you become involved in the film, and what did you want to make sure that they got right from your perspective?
So, we Josh and I actually met. I treated the child of a friend that actually knows Josh, and that's how we got involved. I started off in the movement, unfortunately, with my training in Chicago, having to treat a 6-month-old with a bullet wound my first week on the job, and that was a very pivotal moment for me to engage in this work. But it was really serendipitous, I think, that we met. And the intention here is working with many of the grassroots groups that are here today, right? I know many of you are incredibly passionate about this topic. I was talking to some of the folks tabling earlier today. How can we take this film and turn it into actionable solutions that we know work, right? There has been progress made in the past, and that's kind of the goal.
And again, in terms of the film itself, was there one piece of advice you had or something, some kind of guidance that from your perspective was important?
Yeah, I mean, Josh and Avi don't really listen to me, so you can ask them. You want to say something?
Chethan guided us from the beginning and helped us understand we're not experts on this issue,
Yeah.
but we immersed ourselves in this and made this film. But we were walking into a world that we didn't know, and we wanted to work with these organizations and make sure we were telling the story in an effective and useful way.
Can you think of one example of that, of how you took that to heart in the studio?
Well, it was really important to me, and I think to Steve as well. I've spent a lot of time in my career thinking about the possibility of telling stories that speak to people across broad political spectrums. And is there a way to tell stories where you can bring people together in a way that can unify and maybe even affect change? And it was very important to us to try to frame this story in a way that would do that, and to tell it in a way that put the politics aside. And I think the very conception of the idea from Steve of the bedrooms did a lot of that. But you'll notice that in this film, no one ever says the word gun, not once. And that was very intentional. And we wanted the film to be about the kids because we think that says everything.
Yeah, two things. I didn't want anybody to just get turned off to the film. I wanted everybody across the board to be able to relate to it and see their own child in it. And I also wanted to make sure, and the reason that we brought in the consultants, I wanted to make sure that the parents were happy with the product in the end. That would ruin my life if we did all this and the parents, didn't feel like they were treated well or weren't happy that they took part in this. That would really have ruined me. So I think by bringing in experts, it guarantees you're going to hit the mark.
It was touching for me when you were on a Zoom call, and when the parents, I think it was the Sruggs, and talking about their daughter Hallie, and when they said they're nervous, and you said, "I am too."
Yeah, again, because I just, I knew they were letting me into a sacred space. I knew they were trusting me, first of all, and that was a really powerful thing for me to deal with. Did I deserve that trust? How did I earn that trust? How was I going to keep that trust? That's what I was nervous about it. I didn't know how it was going to go. For most of it's awkward just talking to somebody who's lost a child. Like, what do you say? Sorry for your loss. That's trite. So just knocking on the door and meeting them for the first time, I'm like anybody else. I was nervous, and there's other places I probably would have rather been, but I just felt like this is something I had to do.
Nancy, do you want to comment on that?
I get nervous too. I'm the parent. I get nervous talking to people. I'm the person who deals with it by bottling it up because it's just too much to be in that space 24/7. But you did an amazing job honoring the kids, honoring Dominic. We were always at ease and comfortable, and it's been like that the whole time. It was, about a year or so ago, and it's always been a positive experience.
A
What
year
was
that
interesting, what was interesting too about not just you, with all the families, is this is a very intense thing. You're going into this intense place, but we laughed as much as we cried. I mean, there's just so many laughs, and I think that's something people may not realize as you go in there. And there's so many funny stories about these kids and things they collected, like that. The cat T-shirt, that she wanted and the parents didn't want to buy for her. I mean, we had a lot of laughs.
I was also thinking about Dominic because I think when I watched the film, the Dodgers had just won. So
Oh, he would have loved that.
He would have
My
loved
husband
that.
posted on the foundation that he was like the biggest fan. He would have loved that they
Yeah.
had a back-to-back championship.
Yes.
And the video of him, that's probably when he was around 9 years old. He actually got on the Jumbotron at Dodger Stadium, at Angel Stadium, and at the Staples Center because he was just so crazy, and the camera would just pan to him, and he would be on the big screen dancing.
we have an audience question. Do you think the media and the way these events are represented causes a mass shooting contagion effect? And then there's a related question. In what ways does the media need to change its coverage of school shootings? You've vaguely referred to that.
I think if we can go X number of years without a school shooting, that it will go away, because I think one does breed the next. So I would like to see. I don't know how you get there, but I think that's the goal. There are things that I would like to change at CBS News if I had my way. I wish we never knocked on the door of somebody who just lost a child in a school shooting for X number of days and months or whatever, because I just don't see the point of that. And news organizations are always worried about getting beat to the story, like, oh, they got an interview with so-and-so. My solution to that is just say at the beginning of the coverage, it is CBS News policy that we do not attempt to interview parents in the immediate aftermath of the school shooting, so you will not see any of those interviews here. I think it's important to continue to not, and we're doing a better job of this, of not giving the name of the shooter or giving them much attention at all, because I think that is detrimental. I've been preaching that for a long time, and I think now they don't listen to the feature guy on things like this very much, but I think they've come to their senses on that. Most networks have.
But I will say this, that, the fact that CBS News ran Steve's piece, which ran
Shorter version of this.
It ran last November. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then it ran again right after the shooting in Minneapolis several weeks ago. They ran it again, which is, that's Steve's piece. They ran it twice on CBS Sunday Morning. So I think it's great that CBS News agreed to run Steve's piece.
I wonder, Steve, also, if given your role, as you said, to finish up the show, saying, the world is still a good place, here are the good things that have happened, here's the teacher who ran toward the shooter, if that is giving you more gravitas when now you look and say, I can't just put a happy face on this anymore, that you're the person who people will listen to, because this is not usually your role.
Yeah, I'm not probably the best person to answer that. I don't know why
I'm
people would
telling
take.
you,
I don't know why people would
Probably the one.
listen to me on this versus somebody else. I just felt like it's something I just had to do for me almost. I have little kids, and there's something about losing a kid in a school shooting, the fear of that, because this is like the safest place you could ever think they would be, next to your own home. And so I think there's something doubly painful about losing a kid in that way. But
I also think that you're in a unique position. I mean, when the good news guy is telling us we need to listen to something
Yes.
that's not good news, we better listen.
Yes.
And I was just going to add one thing to the media question, because I think this is an example of really diversifying how we look at the issue. I think, I'll say this from a public health standpoint as well, and media standpoint. I think that all too often we simplify this epidemic far too much. And what I mean by that is we don't discuss gun violence with enough nuance. And so I think where the media could improve, And I like that this is focused on one type of gun violence, right? And what I mean by that is gun violence includes public mass shootings, suicides, interpersonal community violence, and accidental shootings in the home. Each has such different risk factors that I would argue that they're entirely different in their solutions. The problem is that when we talk about gun violence as this big block of an issue, we end up actually, we see this in public health, vilifying gun owners, non-gun owners, maybe different communities versus another. And I think there could be a lot more nuance if you're talking about the global reporting of this epidemic. And I don't see that. There are so many times where there might be a particularly violent weekend in the south side of Chicago or Baltimore because of inner city community gun violence. And you hear lawmakers calling for assault weapon bans. That is actually the wrong policy to stop interpersonal community violence. That has a lot more to do with social determinants of health, lack of jobs, socioeconomic conditions, versus we should be calling for things like assault weapon bans and keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals when it comes to stopping mass shootings. And so I think that nuance is really important.
There's a question from the audience. Time it, and again, the wall that gun control activists hit is the pro-gun lobby and gun supporters. Do you have a plan to reach those who are pro-gun?
Well, yes, we do. We're working with most of the gun violence prevention organizations in different ways. We've done fundraisers with them. We also are, we're actively doing that now. And the film's only been out for a few weeks. So, and then it will be on Netflix on December 1st. And so it'll reach a very broad audience. We have a website that brings people to different ways they can engage with the issue. And then I think there are people who we hope will just see this film and possibly change their mind. And I'll tell you one story that we encountered recently. A few weeks ago, we take these photographs from the film, and we have a gallery show that's moving around the country. And so we had a show recently in New York State, and the gallerist told us the story. His installer, who hangs the photos, was a somewhat conservative guy. He wore a T-shirt that said, "Guns aren't stupid, people are." And this guy was, had a very strong point of view about this. Anyway, it was his job to hang these photos. So about halfway through the day of hanging the photos, he told the gallerist, he said, "I think I need to go home." And he went home, and the next day when he came back, he told the gallerist, "I will never wear that T-shirt again." And so this is one story we have, but I know there will be, millions of people are going to see this film when it's on Netflix, and we can hope that there will be more guys like that.
Which reminds me of the end of the film, Steve, when you said you wish that every American could stand in a bedroom of a child lost to gun violence. I want to make sure we have time. Let me ask our gurus here how much time we have left. Oh, good, 5 minutes left. Is your hope, Steve, for you and your involvement in the issue and looking at this in the future is what? Do you see yourself as continuing to pursue this or not?
I don't perceive myself as playing any role in the issue. I think my role was just to let people see the rooms, to try to get people to stand in those rooms, as I said at the end. I think that's the end of my role. I'm not going to become a lobbyist one way or the other. I'm first and foremost a journalist, and I don't take a stand on what needs to be done next. I'll leave that to others. I just want people that with widely differing views on what we should do next to just get in a room together and try to work things out. And I think my role is to get them in the room, to get them on the same page, that page being empathy, and then let them take it from there.
Mm-hmm. And Josh, how about you? You mentioned a little bit about the activism that you're seeing coming from this. For you, in terms of your future film work?
Well, for me, I think, I make film. I'm a little different than Steve. I make films because I want to see things change. And I have hope. And in talking with people like Chethan, I have hope that things can change. And just that story about that one guy, I know there will be others. And I know there's a way to tell stories that can bring people together. And I'm hopeful that this film has the potential to do that. We'll find out after December 1st and start to see what it's doing. I know that this is one of many things that have to happen. This is a drop in the bucket. People have been working on this issue for many, many years. And maybe there needs to be 100 films like this or 1,000 films like this. But I do believe that we can create change over time.
And I just had one other question about your history of filmmaking. We were talking earlier tonight about my first interview with you, which happened way too many years ago, and it was on your film about Nicholas Ceausescu and the orphanages in Romania. It was some searing images. Things did get better then, but you have dealt with some really profoundly disturbing issues in your career. And I wonder where, this one's quite different, but still disturbing. Where does this lie in your work?
Well, yeah, that first film I made, can I say what year it was? Or?
Sure. We were both alive.
We were both,
It's
yeah.
fine.
It was actually, I think, 1990.
Oh. Even farther back.
I
We're
think
even older than.
you were one of the first people, if not the first, to ever interview me. So thank you.
I remember it well. It was a pleasure.
And well, that film was about the abandoned children of Romania, and when communism fell, it was revealed that there were over 100,000 abandoned children in that country. And so I went to Romania and lived in the orphanages and documented the conditions of these children, brought back the footage, made a film. It was on public television. And it led to the American adoption of thousands of Romanian children. And so since then, I think in many ways as a filmmaker, I've been chasing that. How can we make films that can actually lead to change, that can help people, that can change people's lives? And, I was thinking about the fact that that was my first film, and this film is also about children in a very different way. But I do think that this has the potential to help children. So we'll see, and we'll keep working away.
There's a question from the audience. Is there a story that simply did not make the cut of the film that is poignant that you can share? You shot a
Dozens
lot of film.
of stories.
Yes, right.
I mean, we had Nancy talked to us for a few hours about, and Frank, her husband, talked with us for a few hours about Dominic and told us so many lovely, amazing stories about him. And all of the parents could speak for hours or days about their kids. It was Javier Casares, who's Jackie's father, told us that his purpose in life now is to tell Jackie's story and to make sure that she's never forgotten. And so we have just so many beautiful little details and stories. We have 10,000 photographs, and each of the photos tells a story.
One thing that matters to me, the Muhlbergers, after they talked to us, they could not get rid of this room. The dad had several job offers that he would require moving, but he could not take the job because they could not give up the room. After working with Josh and making the film, they felt like they got to a place where they could finally pack up the room, and they have since done that. And
well, a lot of it was because of the photo book. The photo book that they were given made them feel as that they could. That's the last family, Gracie's family.
Yeah,
they packed up the room, and
that almost makes the whole thing. No matter what happens, no matter what change happens for me, that makes the whole thing worthwhile. That seems like we were able to help them in that one really big way.
Chethan, I wonder if you can tell us in terms of your work and how this fits in to your message, that even doctors can somehow move on and not look at each event individually, each victim individually.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to what Steve mentioned around empathy. You can't help but think about your own kids when you're looking at these rooms, because we all have those experiences as parents. And I think, just jumping to action, right? What does that look like? And in our line of work, in the public health field around this, and a lot of the grassroots movements here, the question is going to be, how do we leverage that story to be able to create actionable change? And just to double down on what Josh said, Senator Cornyn in Texas, when he supported the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, he was compelled by gun owners in Texas who did in their stories talk about the fact that they were scared about losing their kids. So this is Senator Cornyn, and now he's facing a difficult situation because he did support that law. But, there were tons of Republicans that supported President Biden's legislation on this. So, I think the question is, how do we get this in front of the right people? There's significant interest in Congress and Senate to start viewing this film. So there's an advocacy policy aspect. A big one is, how do we support the families and the steps and the organizations that they have in moving forward? And how do you start talking about this? You look at this, it's easy to feel hopeless. I know Josh and I have talked about this. How do you not feel hopeless in this situation? I think it's important for everyone to remember that there are strategies that have worked, right? Whether it be the assault weapon ban we used to have, that did have tremendous bipartisan support. Community violence intervention right now has led to the lowest gun violence rates right now in all our cities across the entire country that we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years. So things are working in certain areas. How do we kind of double down on that and use this film to compel people to act?
Nancy, the last word from you. I wonder what you would like to see done so it doesn't feel like the world is moving on and forgetting.
Well, what I like about the idea of this film is the empathy factor. How Steve said he wanted people to be able to step into the rooms. People tell me all the time, I can't imagine what you're going through, and you're right, you can't. I couldn't have done that before November 14th, 2019 either. And now that I'm going through that, it's not even something I could describe to someone in words. So just the empathy factor, maybe the film will help people with certain beliefs one way or the other open their minds, come to some kind of compromise. Just being able to hear another person's perspective on regulations, restrictions. So hopefully that does help with that. Hopefully it makes it real to people. I'm sure I never thought my son would be killed in a school shooting. Weirdly, before he started, right when he was going to start high school, we talked about the Parkland shooting. What to do if there was a school shooting, whose house to run to, but I never thought he would be so affected by it. So I think it will help people put themselves in their shoes, like you said. Maybe people have kids who like SpongeBob also, and that'll affect them, or who like a cat sweatshirt, or putting their clothes together, the week of, or their clothes for school that week. Maybe it just makes it more real.
Thank you. Nancy, Chethan, Josh, Steve, thank you so much.